Hey guys, welcome to Sky World. President Joe Biden wasn't planning to take questions on Thursday. His helicopter was waiting outside on the White House's South Lawn. But after a 10-minute statement on the Supreme Court's affirmative action ruling, a CNN reporter called out, "Is this a rogue court?" The president stopped in his tracks. Pausing to think a moment, he looked over his shoulder. "This is not a normal court," he said before leaving. This week's monumental rulings, striking down affirmative action in college admissions and unraveling Biden's student debt relief plan, among them, amount to serious setbacks for a president who promised as a candidate to advance racial equity and erase student debt. They are also an urgent reminder to Democrats of the enduring consequences of elections at a moment Biden's advisors are searching for ways to inject enthusiasm into his bid for another term. What impact that will have on the coming election remains unknown. But Biden and his team have already begun assigning blame on Republicans for dismantling programs that have benefited young, college-educated and minority voters, all critical components of the Democratic coalition Biden will need to mobilize if he hopes to win re-election. That 3 justices within the court's conservative majority were appointed by President Donald Trump, both Biden's predecessor and, according to polls, his most likely opponent next year, creates even more of an impetus for Biden to use the rulings as a political cudgel as his campaign heats up. The excesses of the Supreme Court are going to backfire, said Representative Richie Torres, a New York Democrat. You know, the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade reduced what was supposed to be a red wave in the 2022 election cycle to nothing more than a red trickle. So not only is the Supreme Court's decision bad law, it's also bad politics, and it's going to come back to haunt the Republican Party. Speaking to a group of Democratic donors in New York City on Thursday evening, Biden sought to underscore the stakes of the court's new supermajority, a preview of how he'll frame the issue over the coming year. The Supreme Court is becoming not just conservative, but almost, it's like a throwback. It's like a throwback, some of the decisions they're making, Biden told donors in a private dining room inside the Seagram building. Did you ever think we'd be in a position, after 50 years of acknowledging the right of privacy in the Constitution, suggesting that there's no such thing as the right to privacy? Despite his criticism of the court, Biden has rejected some liberal suggestions on reforming the panel. He opposes expanding the number of justices that sit on the court and hasn't embraced term limits. If we start the process of trying to expand the court, we're going to politicize it, maybe forever, in a way that is not healthy, Biden said during a friendly interview on MSNBC shortly after Thursday's decision on affirmative action. The administration searches for a plan B on student loans. Biden's student loan plan, which came about last year after months of agonizing internal debate over its costs and eligibility criteria, was intended to free low and middle-income Americans from crippling debt. Throughout the process, Biden expressed concern at being seen as offering a handout to the wealthy. Eventually, pressure to fulfill one of his top campaign promises led to the plan to forgive up to $20,000 in student loan debt for certain borrowers. For months, the White House publicly said there was no alternative plan if the Supreme Court struck down the student debt relief program. But behind the scenes, top White House officials were working for several weeks to fulfill a simple directive from the president to be ready in the event the Supreme Court did not do the right thing, White House officials said. The president's charge to his team was described as this: if the court ruled against the program,